When we eat more and more every day, we put not only our stomachs, but also our health at risk. But what are the reasons for this overconsumption? Imagine a room for 100 people. Every day, enough food arrives in that room to feed 150 people. How would you distribute the food? You could give it to everyone equally, maybe a little extra for the people with bigger bodies and higher caloric needs. But at the end of the day, you feed everybody, right? At the end of the day, there's food for 150 people. Nobody's starving, right? Or we can do it like this. 70 people in the room eat all the food for 150 people. 30 people starve to death. And the 70 people who eat the extra food have health problems because they are overweight. If you think I am describing the world right now, you are too naive. I wish we were that smart. In the third scenario, 50 people in the room eat the food for 100 people and throw away the food of the remaining 50 people because they are full. Of the 100 people in the room, 50 will die of hunger, and the other 50 will die of obesity. Every year, 1/5 of the food produced in the world is thrown away. While this is happening, 9 million people die of hunger. Ironically, 3 million people die each year from overeating. And even funnier, just a quarter of the food thrown away is enough to end world hunger. And let's forget about hunger. There are other very serious harms to the world from wasted food. I will tell you all about them, but first we need to take a closer look at the relationship between food and humanity. Throughout history, food production and human development have gone hand in hand. Early humans, like other animals, were hunters and gatherers, content with what nature gave them. They hunted animals, picked wild plants, and ate them. The food that could be created was limited, and that was the extent of civilization. But after a while, humans realized that they could dominate nature. They began to domesticate the wild plants they used to gather and eat. This is what we call the agricultural revolution. When people switched to agriculture, they were able to feed themselves without taking risks and even produce more food than they needed. This led to a population explosion. Because people who farmed were now settled in a particular region, culture began to be passed down from generation to generation, and writing emerged. The question of how to distribute the surplus food and who would own it led to hierarchy and class struggle. Cities were built first, then kingdoms. All of these were able to produce additional food, but as the population grew, it was not enough. In the 1700s, in France, one of the most developed countries of the time, a person had access to an average of 2,200 calories, while in England, it was 1,800 calories. Considering that the daily requirement of a human being is 2,500 calories, humanity still had not fully solved its test with food until the Industrial Revolution, when human beings, having learned to build machines, began to produce much more efficiently. Of course, this was reflected in food production and agriculture. And just like the agricultural revolution, there was a new increase in population. But this was a much more dramatic increase. By the 1900s, with the Industrial Revolution, for the first time in history, humanity was at a point where it could produce enough food for the entire world population and more. World hunger could have ended completely, but it didn't. Because of the nature of capitalism, food producers produced and made a profit. They produced more and more for more profit. It got to the point where they started producing surpluses. Eventually, there was a limit to what people could eat. At that point, the capitalists had two options. They could either start selling the surplus to places like Africa, which would not be profitable, or they could make sure that other countries with high purchasing power, especially the American people, ate or bought more than they needed. Of course, they chose not to do what was good for humanity, but to make more profit. The cereal companies created a meal out of nothing, like breakfast. Now, people ate 3 meals instead of 2, and they added additives to the food they produced to make it addictive. They combined eating with some activities with public relations, like movies and popcorn, TV, and chips. Portions got bigger. Today's plates are 23% bigger than in 1900. Refrigerators got bigger. Today's refrigerators are 15% bigger than in the past. Fast food came into existence, and they've promoted it all over the world through Hollywood. This was all done to sell the surplus food to the citizens of countries like the USA, who are more profitable customers. They played with society's eating habits, and of course the consequences of this soon became apparent. In 1960, 13% of the American population was obese. Today, that number has risen to 42%. In other words, 1 in 3 adults is ruining their health by overeating. Obesity-related healthcare costs in the US are $210 billion a year. The system we are in causes people to become obese by eating more than they need to, makes money off of it, and then makes money again while treating them for their deteriorating health. But this treatment process does not end. They also make money by turning it into a television show. People killing themselves by eating extra food has become a huge industry. In addition, 40% of the food produced in America and 1/5 of the food produced in the world is thrown away. While this is happening at one end of the world, people are starving at the other end. 10% of the world's population does not have access to enough calories, and 9 million people die from hunger and related diseases. The saddest part is that just a quarter of the food thrown away could feed these hungry people. For the first time, humanity has the productive capacity to end world hunger, but we don't because it is more profitable for rich people to eat enough to kill themselves and throw away what they don't eat than to end world hunger. Most importantly, we are killing our world because of the food we waste. The food we produce and throw away unnecessarily releases carbon when it is produced, stored in the refrigerator, transported, and when it rots, it releases methane gas. 10% of the greenhouse gases that humans release into the atmosphere come from the food we throw away. This may sound small, but it is more than the global warming impact of all the flights in the world, or all the plastic produced in the world. In other words, on one half of the world, people are getting sick from overeating. Almost half of the food produced is wasted, while on the other half, people are starving. As if that were not enough, we are also warming the world we live in by producing more than we need. We are on the fast track to making it uninhabitable. All of this is happening because we live in a paradigm that tells us to do what is most profitable in the marketplace, not what is best for humanity. But I believe there will come a day when African mothers will be angry at their children for not finishing what is on their plates, and on that day, the world will be saved.